Welcome to the 21st annual Breakfast of Champions, and we're thrilled to be back in person at the Asbury Boathouse after 3 years of dealing with Zoom and COVID and all of that. There's a writer's strike, so I had to write my own material, so the jokes are going to be worse than usual, but it did occur to me with a crowd like this, next year we're going to need a bigger boathouse. For the young people who don't get that joke, ask someone with one of those shark license plates and they'll explain it to you. And see, that's some people haven't seen Jaws. So I will give you a brief history of this event. It started 21 years ago in conjunction with then Ocean State Action as a fundraiser and a way to recognize the important work that was going on in the state and the environment. And we will talk about that as we recognize 8 people today and hear from 3 or 4 other friends to speak to us. But before we do that, I want to introduce you to Jed Thorpe, who is the Executive Director of Clean Water Action Rhode Island, the 6th Executive Director of Clean Water Action that I have worked with in these many years, and he's going to give you some logistics for the day. Jed?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I will talk more about our work at the end of the event, but for now, just a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, more coffee is on the way, so apologies for running out. Thank you all for being here. I'm glad that we were able to give some of you an excuse to blow off work on a Friday morning, so thank you for being here. We are attempting to make this is the first year that we've tried to make this a zero waste event. So that's why none of the plates or dishes match. This will remind you of being in your 20s when none of your stuff matched in your kitchen. A couple of logistical things. When you're done with your plates, with your cups, you can either just leave them on the table. We'll retrieve those at the end. We also have a bin over here that you can put your plates in and your cups. We also have a compost bin. If you have any compostables, obviously no meat or eggs in the compost bin, you can scrape off your compostables and put them in the bucket. Any other logistical housekeeping items that I forgot? Okay, enjoy.
If there are, we'll get to them as we go along the day. One of the things that is terrific about Rhode Island and terrific about this event is we have so many elected official friends, some of whom we're going to be recognizing later. I'm going to save our first speaker the trouble by trying to recognize all the elected officials in the room very rapidly so that it's my fault if I miss someone and not a staffer's fault. And if you don't see them in the room, that's because they sponsored, but they called and said, and they all have the same excuse when they call me. Even though I've retired from NEA, they say, oh, I'm at my kid's school today. People without kids say, well, I'm at my kid's school today. But in no particular order, other than it was the order handed to me, Senators Val Lawson is here, Dawn Oria was a sponsor, Sandra Cano is here, Josh Miller is here, Matt LaMountain is here, Representatives, Majority Leader Chris Blazajewski, David Bennett, Lauren Carson, Sherry Cruz, Susan Donovan, who's on her way, Joe Solomon, Jennifer Stewart, and council member from Providence, Sue Arndebrough. Our elected officials are crucial to our support. We make them go to that, most of them go to that big white marble building to do environmental work instead of being outside on a nice day like this. So we thank them all for their support and for being here or for sponsoring the event, and someone will hand me a note if I missed anybody in the room. But our first speaker today works in a different big white building all the way down in Washington, D.C. Who did I miss? Oh, we're going out of order? We are breaking with tradition. So our second speaker today is going to go first, which is covering because he is apparently going to jump on a plane or something else, ruining the whole order of introduction. He has also been recognized for his efforts in this very forum. The Wall Street Journal hates him, so we love him. Our very good friend, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
To be specific, it is the editorial page that hates me. The reporters actually think I'm doing a reasonably good job. So it's great to be with you, and I'm particularly delighted to see so many of my colleagues in office here. Obviously, Jack Reed, but oh my gosh, what a legislative turnout. I can remember when finding legislators here was a little bit scarce years and years ago. This is really fabulous, and it shows how strong these issues are and all the terrific work that's happening here. Mr. Leader, I know the speaker was here earlier. Right here? There he is. He didn't go. Right in front of me. So you guys nearly have a quorum to get business done here, which is really, really exciting. So I'm not going to go over all the names again, but I do want to express my appreciation to Megan Coleman and June Speakman and Carol McEntee and Terry Cortfriend, who are the award recipients today. It's really exciting and great. Just a quick word on what is going on in Washington, and since we're here as environmentalists, particularly on climate. We have the Inflation Reduction Act, which I think is going to be significant and will measurably reduce carbon emissions. How much it does will depend on how well it's implemented. And I think Jack and I are both very happy that President Biden chose John Podesta to try to implement it. If there's anybody who can do it, it's John. So we're in trust but verify mode. I'm continuing to ride herd on him, but at least the baseline is very strong with Podesta rolling out a very good IRA. Then, buried in the methane regulation that's coming up through the EPA is a social cost of carbon. And the Biden administration has promised me that as soon as it is law through the Administrative Procedures Act, Shalonda Young from the Office of Management and Budget is going to tell every other agency in the executive branch of government, here's how you need to implement that social cost of carbon in all your decision making. Purchasing, permitting, licensing, regulation, all of it. So that can be very powerful. It's $120 cost per ton, which is a pretty serious social cost of carbon. So that's a good thing. Now they have to make good on their promise to actually do that, and sometimes there's slippage, so we're not quite at trust but verify. We're still at pushing them forward. And the third very cool thing that's happened is that the EU has announced and approved its carbon border tariff, which is basically a pollution price for imports. So we're going to have to start paying that because we don't do as well as the EU. And that puts real pressure on us to have our own. And I'm working, believe it or not, it's bipartisan because of steel and aluminum and cement and pharma all being winners from it. So all we have is the enemy of the fossil fuel industry to fix. But I think we can do a very serious carbon border tariff that will match the EU's. And the UK is working on it too, and Canada will follow us like that. So we could have a pretty robust setup of international carbon pricing, federal government carbon pricing, and a effectively rolled out IRA. That does not get us to climate safety, but it gets us onto a path to climate safety. And that's pretty important. So there is some good news happening on climate issues in Washington. And I have to go to court, Veterans Court, because they're having a graduation. It's one of the coolest things you could possibly go to. Is when somebody gets tangled up with law enforcement, they find out they're a veteran, they look at their issues and their situations, they figure out what supports they need, they go through, and instead of having a proceeding, they have a graduation. And it's really, if you haven't been to one, I commend it. So I get to go off to that this morning. So thank you to Jack for letting me go first. And I promise that Clarence Thomas and Leonard Leo and the rest of the scoundrels will continue to receive my diligent attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheldon, and thank you for being here when you've got something right after that. So now, getting back into the order of introduction, I felt pretty good, where's Sue, getting a letter from the Nature Conservancy saying I had been a member for 33 years, and they just wanted to call and thank me and not ask for money, first time ever. And I thought that was great, and then on Sunday I went to Jack Reed's 34th annual May breakfast and thought about his time as a state senator, as a congressman, as our senior senator from Rhode Island, and 21 years ago as the first recipient of a Breakfast of Champions Clean Water Action Award, our senior senator, Jack Reed.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob, for those kind words. I want to also recognize Jed. Thank you. Sheldon is a as he's demonstrated, one of our leaders when it comes to climate change, environmental activity, he is unsurpassed in the Senate. So we're very lucky. I'm very lucky to have him as my partner. I'd like to recognize all of the recipients. There was Senator Kallman, Representative McAtee, Representative Corcoran, Representative Speakman, Pat Crowley, Alex Kufner, Zachary Pinto, and Rupert Friday. Congratulations. Please. You know, we can do, and we try to do, as Sheldon explained, big things in Washington, but big things don't impact local communities unless there are people that are going to make them work. And you're the people that makes it work. So all of our great programs, great initiatives will stay on the shelf unless you get out and make them work. And we're recognizing those people that get out and make them work so well. As Sheldon explained, our bipartisan infrastructure law is already bearing some results. It provides over $377 million to improve the state's water infrastructure in Rhode Island. That's a big number. That's going to be put to work. Terry's here, DEM's working, Providence Water Supply is working. But for a long time, we didn't have the money, we had the problem. Now we've got the money and we have to deal with the problem, and I know we will. There's also $141 million dedicated to replacement of lead pipes, which is a major public health problem. I learned about this 20 plus years ago when I was a young congressman, and finding out that young children, particularly in poor areas, when they get to school, it's too late. They've been exposed to lead for the last 5 or 6 years in their homes, through the drinking water pipes, through raising up and down the old windows with the lead paint, and they have neurological problems that are not going to be fixed by simply going ahead and saying, here, take an extra course. So we're dealing with a fundamental issue, and we've got the money to do it. And we're also working individually. We've got $3.16 million to improve Pawtucket sewer system. This is working together with David, with Seth, and with Jim, and with Sheldon. $2.5 million for Jamestown. I wonder how they got that. That's a water line problem. $1.4 million for wastewater infrastructure improvements. $1.2 million for stormwater improvements in Cumberland, and we're putting our shoulder to the wheel. But the point I want to conclude with is first recognizing the honorees for your great work, and saying that what we do is important in Washington, but it means nothing unless you have people here on the ground taking the resources, investing them wisely, and making sure we know what we should be doing. And I can't leave without recognizing the Speaker for many, many reasons. Speaker, thank you for your leadership. Congratulations.
Through the wonders of technology, we're going to hear from our soon-to-be former senior congressman on a video screen behind me. And since he's not here to see and the coffee has been replenished, I will not tell if you get up while this video is playing and get yourself some more coffee.
Good morning. I'm Congressman David Cicilline. I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person today to celebrate Clean Water Action's 21st Annual Breakfast of Champions, because I'm in Washington for votes. But I wanted to take a moment to recognize this extraordinary organization and the true environmental champions you are honoring this morning. For over 50 years, Clean Water Action has played an essential role in America's environmental stewardship, both in Rhode Island and across the country. In our state, Clean Water Action has worked to protect our drinking water from pollution, revitalize our treasured coastline amid the impacts of climate change, advance environmental justice, and reduce plastic waste to safeguard our waterways and natural environment. Thank you, Jed Thorpe, State Director for Clean Water Action Rhode Island, and all of the other staff and volunteers for the work you do for our communities. We're here this morning to recognize some of the foremost environmental leaders in our state who are spearheading the fight against climate change and ensuring that future generations of Rhode Islanders will be able to enjoy the ocean state's natural beauty. Congratulations to Rupert Friday, winner of the David R. Garrity Award for Lifetime Commitment to the Environment. Thank you for your lifelong work in the environmental field that has made our state a better place for all of us. Congratulations to Patrick Crowley, winner of the Climate Advocate of the Year Award. Thank you for your critical work on the Climate Jobs Rhode Island Coalition, growing Rhode Island's pro-worker, pro-climate economy. Congratulations to Alex Kuffner, winner of the Excellence in Environmental Journalism Award. Your reporting provides crucial information that helps keep the public, including me and other elected officials and community leaders, informed on Rhode Island's green transition and the effects of climate change. Congratulations to Zachary Pinto, winner of the Emerging Environmental Leader of the Year Award. Environmental justice must be at the forefront of our climate agenda, and your advocacy and tireless work in this area will continue to improve equity in Rhode Island. Finally, congratulations to my colleagues in government, Senator Megan Kalman and Representatives Terry Cordovan and Carol Hagan-McEntee and June Speakman on your 2023 Legislative Champion Awards. It is an honor to work in partnership with you to protect Rhode Island's environment for generations to come. Congratulations again to all of today's awardees. Each one of you is doing essential work to make our communities more resilient, sustainable, healthy, and equitable. Today, this work is more important than ever. Our state is already feeling the severe impacts of climate change, from crippling droughts to rising sea levels to more frequent flooding of our roads and bridges to the erosion of our coastline. Climate change is an urgent and existential threat to our communities that demands courageous and comprehensive action from our elected leaders. I was proud to help pass both the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act over the past 2 years. The Inflation Reduction Act represents the single largest investment in combating climate change and advancing renewable energy in American history. While the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act has already begun to distribute billions of dollars in funding for climate priorities across the country. These two revolutionary laws have already brought tens of millions of dollars in climate-smart investments to Rhode Island and will continue to do so for years to come. Although my time in Congress is ending, I'm proud of the environmental legacy I will leave behind and look forward to continuing this important work back in Rhode Island at the helm of the Rhode Island Foundation. Thank you once again to Clean Water Action and to all of today's awardees for the indispensable work you do in safeguarding our environment. And congratulations again on your well-deserved awards, and I hope to see you when I'm back home in Rhode Island soon.
Great thanks to our congressman. He's going to be in charge of a lot of foundation money. When he said he hopes to see you, I think he's going to see a lot of you for all sorts of reasons when he's back in Rhode Island full time. I was asked to remind everyone that this magic symbol will allow you to see the program book, because we are not printing program books because of the zero waste approach to this event. Our next speaker is the speaker. That's why I didn't mention him up front. Speaker Joe Shekarchi is here because we almost have a Democratic quorum, and he has to preside over the Democratic quorum. But if you get out of line, there's a gavel, and he can break the glass and use the gavel. Our very good friend, Speaker Joe Shekarchi.
Thank you, Bob. Bob retired, and I see more of him now at the State House and at events like this. So it's great. It's great to see you. It's great to see you so much. It's great to see all of you, and it's great to be here. And I'm happy you're here in my home city of Warwick. And there are many bigger places to have. They're all going to be in Warwick, because we are the city with the most coastline, and that's so critical. Thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you for all your advocacy. And I mean that sincerely, all of you here. There's so many great things going on with the environment. I know everybody's going to speak. I just want to take a minute and talk about the people who are being recognized today. I have a little something to say about all of them. Everyone knows about the Act on Climate, that we did it. Everyone knows it. I think this is my fourth or fifth environmental forum this year. We've talked about it, we've recognized it. We talked about the bills that are working on. Carol McEntee, David Bennett working on a bottle bill, working on it. Pat Crowley and Priscilla De La Cruz working on a solar siting forest bill that's historic, that brings everybody together. And I know they're going to get it done because they're very good at what they do. But there's so many other people that really deserve some recognition. And I have to start with Terry Cortrevan. Terry has been an unbelievable representative in the House. She's become a close friend, but more than that, she is smart, she is hardworking, she is balanced, and she did a phenomenal job. And I know we're going to get it done this year. With our partners in the Senate. We're going to get the shoreline access, and that was Terry. And I've said this before, Terry proved, and to have a study commission doesn't mean the bill goes to die. It means you go to work on it. And look at the work product that came out of that. And I really want to thank you again for that, Terry, because you made a difference and continue to make a difference every single day. And she does it in a very respectful. You don't have to raise your voice and yell and bang on the table to get things done. You have to sit and listen and talk and educate and understand and advocate. And Terry does it very well. So Terry, thank you for that. Chairwoman Carol McEntee, who has had incredible passion in her issues, who passed. Yes. I didn't say that. Carol, I did not say that.
I was going to say that.
Carol has incredible amounts of energy, and she channels that energy to get things done. It's not just in the environmental arena, whether it's in advocacy for LGBTQ, parental rights. Those are some of her biggest accomplishments. She works very hard, and she brings a passion to that office, and her office is chairwoman of a small business. And Carol does it in a way that we're not competing with business. We're not. We're working collaboratively because good businesses want to protect the environment. Good businesses and good environmental policy is good business policy. And it's happening. Carol's proving that every day. And she comes from a legal background, but also a business background. It doesn't any way diminish her passion for the environment, and she continues to prove that. June Speakman, I could talk about June Speakman for another hour, but I will, and I don't really want to highlight her environmental accomplishments with PFAS because that's all known in this community, but she's the one that I rely on and the House relies on to get our affordable housing package through, to tackle the issue regarding affordable housing, homelessness. June has done a phenomenal job. She heads the Low Moderate Commission. She's chairing it. She's doing a phenomenal, she's the guiding force of that. She's vice chair of the municipal government. Many times she runs that committee. Does a phenomenal job. She brings her scholastic skills to the House, and she helps educate all of us. And it's incredible. Senator Megan Coleman, what can I say, Senator? You're a great partner. You're a great partner to have, and we continue to work with you when we want to work together to get bipartisan, bi-camera legislation through, so thank you. Pat Crowley, my friend Pat Crowley, an unbelievable advocate in the labor community. He has taken that to new highs as he's elevated through up the ranks in the labor community, and he has now become a very big environmentalist. Another one who's proved, seriously, that you don't have to be a union person that fights the environment. You can be a union advocate and an environmental advocate, and Pat Crowley gets things done. And because I like him so much, and because I say many nice things about him, some people say I say too many nice things and too much, but what I will tell you is much is expected, Pat, because you can do it, and you have the capability. So we're going to look for you, and not only for the solar siting bill and the forest bill, but for big things to come, because you bridge the labor and the environmental community. And that's not an easy thing to do. Priscilla and Pat have brought 4 parties that never spoke together. Labor, solar developers, environmentalists, and who else? There's another group of that's, I don't want to say the government, thank you. The government together. And we're not there yet, but I know he's been working very hard, and we're waiting for that product to come out of the Senate, and hopefully when it does, the House will take it up. But we're going to let you do your job and do a very good job. You continue to do a good job. Alex Kufner from the Journal. The critical environmentalist. Yes, I do not represent any energy companies. He asked me that yearly, and he had. I guess that's okay. It's better than saying, do I represent any polluters? No, I don't either, by the way. So just to let you know that he continues to write about it, but a very fair and balanced. And I want to thank him. I actually never met him, so I don't really know him. There he is. Okay, there he is. Oh, next to my environmental conscious, Amy Moses. So thank you. Thank you, Alex. But I want to thank him because when we passed the Act on Climate, and I didn't really know about it, and I want to thank, I'm going to talk all about marriage, but Chris Blazajewski, I could not talk, get another hour, but he helped educate me on what the bill did and what it doesn't do, and all the false information around it and everything around it. And the next day, we were getting killed. The House passed it. No one thought the House would pass it. The Speaker passed it. He passed it in February. Why did he do it? Wait till the end. Because it made sense. And I went on the radio and I had to defend it on the Tara Granahan show and explain it, and I challenged them, and they said, you have to go out and buy an electric car next week, and you couldn't have a cow, you couldn't own a farm. And there was all these crazy ideas about the Act on Climate. But the very next day, there was probably one of the most well-written articles that debunked all the myths, and that was Alex. So thank you for that, Alex, because really good reporting makes a difference. And sadly, we don't have a lot of that today. And journalism is always, who wants to be the first, not the best. And everyone's rushing, whether it's online or a blogger, or everyone, rushes to get things done. When you write about things, I mean this sincerely, you educate me and you educate the readers, and they're very factual based. So thank you for that. I appreciate that very much. Rupert Friday, thank you for everything you have done to educate and preserve land. I don't know you, but you've got a phenomenal reputation. You've done a phenomenal reputation. Please continue. And Zach Pinto, who I've met, who's a young, aggressive advocate, and I challenge you to take that and build on it and get good things done, because the only way you get good things done that I've learned in my long life in politics and government is by working together to get things done. And I really want to thank you. There's so many people here that I really want to just recognize some of the elected officials. I know you did already, but I think I want to recognize certainly Hank Webster. Where's Hank? Hank, somewhere. I thought he was here. I thought I saw him. No, I missed him. My mistake. But Nellie Gorbea, she was here. There she is. Okay, in the back. Former Secretary of State. I said Amy Moses. You mentioned the senators. You mentioned the reps. So thank you all very much. I want to appreciate, again, all the advocacy. We at the State House are listening. We want to work together. We want to get good things done, and we only can do that with your participation. Don't forget Senator Val Lawson. Nice to see you. I saw you in the back there as well. Thank you very much. And the last but not least, my good friend, George Nee, who's been a champion of the labor movement for his entire life, and he continues to be fair-minded and working hard for the working people of this state, but also gets the big picture. Sat on the Commerce Board for years, understands that we need to have the private sector provide good, high-paying private sector jobs so they can generate tax revenue so we can spend it accordingly. And George continues to be that. And thank you for everything you do. Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, that concludes our program. Get your certificates and get out, because everything that I would have said, the Speaker has already said in acknowledgement of everyone here, and just so appropriately so. I do want to recognize also DEM Director Terry Gray is here. He came to his first event years ago, and one of his colleagues got awarded. And once you come to the Asprey Boathouse, you keep coming back. And George is not only here in support of his friend and colleague Pat Crowley, he's here because AFL is a sponsor, as is NEA Rhode Island, where many of my former colleagues. I should have started with that. I retired last August. It doesn't look like that. Poor Stephanie Mandeville, who's the comms director for NEA. Would you tell them to at least put retired, or maybe not even mention us at all when you're in the paper? I try, maybe Alex can mention it to Kathy Gregg. I'm out, I'm done. I'm just out there helping in the world. I'm not an NEA person anymore. Well, that's not true. I'm a member now, so I hit the cycle backwards. And that is important segue to my disclaimer. I do not pick the nominees. I hand out the awards. There is no nepotism involved. So with that, the first person I'm going to talk about is Brother Pat Crowley. And that's what we say in the labor movement. In 2005, and I was still fairly new as NEA Executive Director, a young man with a thinly disguised Massachusetts accent came and gave the best interview I have seen then and since to come and work for the National Education Association Rhode Island. He was phenomenally well prepared. He had read our website, I didn't even read our website back then. He read all our publications. He knew more about us than we knew about ourselves. He really wanted the job. It wasn't anything to do with the labor movement, which is where his heart is most of the time, and a lot to do with Karen Bradbury is where his heart is the rest of the time, his wife who lived in Lincoln, Rhode Island. Doesn't matter the motivations that get you here. For the last 18 years, we have been lucky enough to have him here. And we set a horrible example for him, because when he came in, not only I was executive director of NEA and secretary treasurer of Working Rhode Island, secretary treasurer of Ocean State Action, and I introduced people like Sheila Dormady, who headed the Environmental Council and was the board chair of the other Ocean State Action and ran Clean Water Action back then. So Pat thought you were supposed to have 3 jobs when you came to Rhode Island. So Pat is still, despite this not always coming clear in the press, he is still the government relations director for NEA Rhode Island. He is the secretary treasurer for AFL-CIO. Rhode Island AFL-CIO hasn't moved all the way up to Washington yet. And the reason we're here, and the reason he's getting the award Climate Advocate of the Year, is for his work in Climate Jobs Rhode Island, where, as the speaker correctly pointed out, he put together a coalition of folks who usually don't get together to work on really important issues. Now, as has been hinted at, I've been doing this gig for 20 years. We were trying to send a message, union people can talk about the environment, and that's a good thing. Pat has taken that to the highest possible level, getting people who don't always agree with each other to sit down on the table and move the ball forward. I could talk about him for entirely too long, because I have known him for not entirely too long. A lot more good stuff coming. So I'll end there and say, Brother Pat Crowley, come up, be recognized, and say some good things to you. Oh, right. I forgot about the photo op thing. You should be in the middle. And by the way, there's a microphone here because we're on Capitol TV. And I'm not just now deciding to say it before Pat speaks. Word to the wise.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. There's a lot of people to thank for for this acknowledgement. First, thank you to Clean Water Action for this award and for all the recognition. I really appreciate it. I want to thank my fellow awardees today. I know all of you have earned this recognition, and for all of the hard work you're doing to try to make Rhode Island a better place. First person I really want to thank, though, is my dear wife, Karen Bradbury. Because if you haven't quite figured Climate Jobs Rhode Island out yet, it was all her idea. Well, maybe not much her idea, but me trying to get her on my side on things and try to make sure that I was in good graces at home. And I only say that half jokingly, by the way. Again, so many people to thank. First, I want to thank my friends at NEA Rhode Island that are here. One of the greatest things about working for there is getting to work for an organization that represents but is run by incredibly strong women. Our new president, Valerie Lawson, our new executive director, Mary Barden, and our communications director, Stephanie Mandeville. 3 people that, without a doubt, are making a difference for teachers and education in the state. Then it goes to my friends at the AFL-CIO. If George Nee did not allow me to kind of run with this idea, I'm not sure what would have happened. But it's a guy like him that has years of leadership and faith in people like me to make a big difference. And then, of course, there's all the folks that work with us. Autumn Guillot, Erica Hammond, Aislinn Hanley, and Mike Rolls, the staff at Climate Jobs Rhode Island, that are just kicking ass every single day. Thank you to all of my friends in government that are here, but in particular, I want to thank the speaker. It's very humbling to hear, someone as important as him, whenever he gets the chance to say thank you to the work that I do. I'm just a Zamboni driver that got lucky. And to hear a guy like him, sing the praises, not just of me as an individual, but the work that we're doing along with so many other people, it really makes a difference, and it inspires me every day to keep on doing this. And yes, Speaker, we are going to get the solar siting bill done. That is going to happen. And of course, the last person I really want to highlight is my dear friend and partner at Climate Jobs Rhode Island, Priscilla De La Cruz. I didn't know Priscilla 2 years ago. I was introduced to her by Sheila Dormady with the idea that we want to try to make a difference in this state. And over the last 2 years, the way I've learned from Priscilla about not only how the environmental movement thinks and acts and reacts, but in terms of how we can do things together. You know, the idea that we would ever have labor movement and environmental movement in Rhode Island, not just sitting and talking with each other, but actually making an incredible difference and forward progress in the state. No one believed that 3 years ago. And thanks to Priscilla and her tenacity and her wisdom and her intelligence, we're getting it done. And we're only just getting started. So I just want to end with this, because we could go on for so long. When you really think about what we did by passing the Act on Climate, thinking ahead decades, that just doesn't happen in public policy. It doesn't happen in politics. We're so concerned about what's right in front of us. And every time I think about the work, that Representative Carson and Senator Oyer did to get that over the finish line, I always think of the old saying, a society becomes great when old men plant trees under whose shade they will never sit. A lot of us are never going to see the benefits of the Act on Climate. Our children will. Our grandchildren will. And we've all collectively in this room helped make Rhode Island a better state. Thank you.
Other than that old man planting trees thing, which kind of cut to the chase, that was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Our next recognition is for excellence in environmental journalism. Anybody who is in this room who has been paying attention to what's going on the issues we're discussing today knows Alex Kuffner's name, even if they have not met him. And the speaker pointed out in his remarks, journalism is tough today. There are some groups out there that aren't engaging in it. And we lament the downsizing that's occurred even in our old great journalistic institutions in Rhode Island. But to its credit, the Providence Journal continues its commitment to covering the environment, and Alex Kuffner's the one that gets to do it. All the stories we have talked about, all the legislation that we will be talking about have been covered by him, and he's been recognized not just by us, but internationally a couple of times from the International Cavil Science Journalism Awards, nationally twice in the Society of Environmental Journalists, and just swept all the awards that are given at the state and regional level for his hard work and coverage of these issues. So, Alex, please come forward and accept the award. It takes us 3 times to get this done.
Congratulations.
All right, and he's going to take your picture. See, we're going to get this right and have him in the middle this time. And wait till the end when we do a big group photo outside. Okay. Microphone is yours.
I'm not used to speaking so much. I mean, I'm like Pat. I'm not as articulate. I'd rather be writing about what you all say rather than being up here. I would like to just acknowledge the proud tradition we have in the newspaper of environmental reporting going back decades. I have to mention, I know most of you have been around long enough that you remember Pete Lord, the late Pete Lord, who was an amazing, amazing journalist, amazing writer. And I still think of Pete, when I'm writing, and I think, what would Pete do? When I write stories, and I'm thinking now as I'm up here again of him, because I think he would really enjoy. I think he would really enjoy being here today. These days, actually, just covering environmental issues in Rhode Island, because there is so much going on. And I'd enjoy having him back to share the workload. It's not just around the climate. Obviously everyone's talked about the Act on Climate here tonight, but there's so many other things around PFAS pollution, around plastics, and it's keeping me busy, and it reminds me how important it is to cover these issues. Reminds me the troubles that we're having in the newspaper industry, and I obviously want to keep writing about these things as long as I can. I think the journal's committed to it. But it does depend, obviously, on readers. So I encourage you all to continue subscribing, continue reading, and you'll keep me employed. And as further enticement, in not this Sunday, but a week from Sunday, I'll have a big story on the Combined Sewer Overflow Project, on the history, looking forward, and also, looking at climate change and how the project's going to hold up with more extreme rainstorms. So you guys care about clean water, you guys care about the environment, so it'll be a good read. Thank you so much to Clean Water Action. Thank you so much for everyone here today, and that's it. Thanks.
I would say that the next recipient is someone I would be planting trees for, but one of the things we're recognizing him for is actually planting trees. Zachary Pinto is being recognized for his work with Groundwork Rhode Island and working on urban landscapes in Pawtucket. Another Pawtucket person, great things start in Pawtucket. He is also the vice president of Black Lives Matter, and he's also been working to save Morley Field in Pawtucket, if you've been following that story, which has been covered fairly extensively. So he already knows Pat Crowley's rule of you got to do 3 things. But Zachary is 18 years old, and that's why he's getting the Emerging Environmental Leader of the Year award. We already know, because someone tipped me off, it's not in the bio, that he's going to be going to Emerson College next year with the intent I say the intent of being a political science and political communications major because Dr. Walsh did not follow through on his original intent in college. I met these environmental professors, I met political science people, and the rest is here we are. Zach also, if you follow him on Twitter, did the best series of tweets just yesterday or the day before on explaining the importance of urban tree canopies. So this old man is learning from this young man, and we are recognizing him today for all his work. Please come forward.
Thank you.
It looks like he wants one more.
First, I would like to thank Clean Water Action for this award. I'd also like to thank all the elected officials who are here today. I'd like to thank my family and everyone who has supported me along my way. I'd like to thank Groundworks Rhode Island, where I got my start in environmental advocacy. I first started working there when I was 14 years old, where we took care of a community garden at Gallego Court in Pawtucket. And there is kind of where I learned about things like the urban tree canopy, the intersectionality between like racial advocacy and environmentalism, and how certain things throughout the years, like how they go hand in hand. So I'd like to give a big thank you to them and their opportunity and the opportunities that they gave me as far as becoming an environmentalist and leading into everything I do today. I'd like to give a big thank you to my state rep, or not my state rep, but my neighboring state rep, Jennifer Stewart, and her work alongside me and many other advocates on the Morley Field issue in Pawtucket. Alongside, racial and environmental advocacy, a big thing is green spaces and equitable green spaces. Places like Morley Field are few and far between in communities of color and in impoverished communities. And I think that it is up to us to kind of preserve what little green spaces are left in our cities like Pawtucket and Providence for the next generation of kids like myself and even those that are younger than me to have these spaces where they can recreationally play and practice sports and everything. But yeah, besides that, I would just like to thank you all for being here today and again stress the importance of intersectionality between environmentalism and racial advocacy and how these two issues go hand in hand. So thank you all.
know, the trick is though, Zach, if you get the Emerging Award after college, you have to come back to Rhode Island and do your work here. And a lot of nods in agreement with that theory. Now we're switching to the legislative champion portion of the awards. And it is once again an embarrassment of riches. And because apparently she threatened the speaker, we're going to recognize Chairwoman McAtee first. That's not true that she threatened the speaker. Carol Hagan McAtee started out life in Warwick, and then she and her husband and her son decided to team up and take over South Kingstown, where they run the Democratic Party, and we've got a state rep, and her son's on the council, and it's just, you know, delightful showing what advanced planning can do. When she's not doing all of that and advocating tenaciously for a whole bunch of issues that aren't part of this award ceremony, but are absolutely award-worthy, which she's been doing for the environment. She's leading the fight against plastic pollution. She's the lead sponsor of the single-use plastic ban. She's the lead sponsor of this year's bottle bill. I have been involved in discussions about the bottle bill for 45 years, since I was a kid in an environmental program one summer while in high school up at Providence College. We thought we had dodged the bullet with curbside recycling. And we really thought it would work because we really believed people would do the right thing. And this stupid single stream thing came on and ruined the whole thing. So now we need a bottle bill. And if Carol is behind it, it's probably got a chance of actually happening. She's done a whole bunch of other things, but let her tell you about it. Please come up, Carol.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. Jed, you and I, we spend a lot of time together these days, right? And this is amazing. I mean, I'm just coming off an 11 o'clock night at the State House, so I'm a little tired. But, you know, it's not often that we get recognized for the hard work we do up there, and the public does not know how much we do for the state. And I want to thank Leader Blazewski and Speaker Sakachi for leading us together on a great route, and we're getting a lot done. But I want to mention my dear friend, Chairman Bennett back there. He is our chairman of Environment, and we have a great team on the Environment Committee. And we have three great leaders here, Representative Carson, Representative Courtfriend, and Representative Speakman. We all work very closely together, and we're all on the same page, I would say, when it comes to that Environment Committee. We can argue a little bit, but mostly we want to get the job done. So he's got a great committee, great leader. Thank you, Chairman. And the bottle bill. I've had it for 4 years now, I think, right? 4 years. This year, we're hoping it's a charm, but it's a heavy lift. We have a lot of opposition. Liquor stores, supermarkets, bottle companies, convenience stores. Have I missed anybody, Jed? No. I mean, we need to show the business community, and I'm chairwoman of small business. We need to show them that we can do this, and it's not going to kill their business. It's not going to cost them money, and it's going to work in the end, because we all know that the single stream recycling is not working. Our landfill is full of plastic. So much of it is contaminated so that they can't recycle it. And then we all see when you take a walk in the woods, or you walk along the street, or if you're in the bay, you see plastic. You see plastic everywhere. We got to get it out of there. We got to start recycling it, and with the 10-cent deposit, which will go back to the individuals when they purchase liquor or bottles or whatever, any kind of juice, they're going to be able to redeem this and get their money back, and then buy more bottles probably. But in any event, we'll find a way to reuse it, and there is a market for it. So it makes sense. Let's just do it. And I want to thank Terry Gray back there, the director. He and I work together. I'm always thanking him. I'm like, please answer my phone, my phone call. Sometimes he does. Mostly he returns it. So thank you. And he's like, oh, what does she want now, right? But thank you all. You do so much for the environment, and we just got to keep at it and chip away. And because it's not just an obligation that we have. It's our duty to protect this planet for our kids, for the future. We got to leave it a better place. And thank you all. Patrick, you're doing a great job. Everybody's doing a great job. So, hey, I'm speaking to the choir here. But let's work together. I need to get this bottle bill passed. I don't know if we can do it this year, but I am counting on you guys next year if I can't get it this year. This is it. We're at the end of the road here. This has got to pass. So, yes, I'm not quiet about my advocacy. Yes, I probably do bang on the table. But sometimes you have to. And thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's so good to be recognized. And have a great day. Thank you so much.
Absolutely does bang on the table. Even if you're on the phone with Chair McEntee, you can hear sometimes the table being banged on in the background. We're going to flip over across the aisle for a minute and go to the Senate and recognize Senator Megan Coleman for two things, or two of the many environmental things she's worked on: the better and more equitable transit in Rhode Island, the new free fare experiment in the R line. That's important. But the biggie in this room, of course, is COSA, the Senate sponsor of the PFAS ban, the 2023 PFAS Act, which is just so important. In her personal life, you're an NEA member, right? So I don't have to say that anymore. I'm not NEA. So again, no nepotism. I don't pick the awards. This is only the second of 3 NEA members we're going to have up here today. Professor Coleman is a professor. She's written more books than Pat Crowley, who's written a couple of books I left out of his introduction. Since you're a professor, why don't you come up and help teach the class? It's going to put some pressure on you in a minute, June. You know?
Thank you.
I like when we have Capital TV. We have
Nice. I feel like my smile is like frozen right there. Excuse me. Thank you, everybody, for being here today, and thank you to, obviously, to Clean Water Action and my many colleagues, both in my chamber who are here and also across the hall in the House. This is only my second term in the Senate, and I have to say it's been a very instructive and very empowering experience. I think I'm up here today for 2 reasons. The first is the transit piece of it. So I'm really proud about the R-Line pilot that we ran. Rep. Felix and I, both Pawtucket women, along with Pat, last year we were like, we could make RIPTA free, and everyone was like, but you could try with the R-Line. And so we tried with the R-Line, and it turns out that transportation ridership on the R-Line has gone up 40% if you don't have to pay fares. Which tells me one of 2 things. Either people who could drive are taking the bus, that's a good outcome, or people who were not taking the bus very often because they couldn't afford it are taking the bus more. That is also a good outcome. So either we have increased mobility for our community, or we have cars going off the road. We probably, in all likelihood, have a little bit of both. I'm also very active in the housing work, and I want to recognize my colleague June Speakman, as well as the speaker, for being really awesome partners on that. But right now, I think the housing nut and the transportation nut are nuts that we can crack simultaneously, if you'll excuse the metaphor. And I mean, this is the key to getting our cities to be more sustainable. 1/3 of our emissions come from transportation up and down the eastern seaboard, and particularly in the Northeast. So this is a thing we have to take care of, and if we're thoughtful about it, we can take care of both of those things at the same time. We can build dense communities, walkable communities around transportation, and I'm really excited at the energy that we have throughout the legislature and through the advocacy community in that regard. Second, PFAS. Also, shout out to Zachary, who is another Pawtucket young person here, and I'm really excited and proud of you and proud of our city. So Zachary had me in mind of the PFAS hearing in the Senate 2 weeks ago, wherein like maybe 9 or 10 10th graders came out to testify in support of the bill. And it was one of my favorite moments in the legislature so far this year. There's a theme of intergenerational care here that I'm picking up on today. And it was really wonderful to watch young people acquiring a skill, telling the world what they think, and also insisting on the right not to be poisoned, which I think is important. So I appreciate all of you for being members of this community that we're trying to build collectively a world worth passing on, and I'm grateful for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our next legislative champion unintentionally is being bracketed by our two professors who we're recognizing, but I have great faith she can hold her own. A little bit of pressure. Well, yeah. You were a school committee chair for a long time, so I had one zinger left. But she can hold her own because, and this is all the great stuff when you do the research, stuff you might not have known. She has previously, before her legislative world and before becoming a small business owner, she was a yacht captain. She held a U.S. Coast Guard captain's license and a private pilot's license. I just think that's so cool. I wanted to mention it. It's got nothing to do with why we're here today. We're here today because Terry Denise Corcoran, who is our next legislative champion, is also involved in the PFAS fight. She's was involved with the ban on food packaging that passed in 2022 and the co-sponsor of the comprehensive PFAS bill in 2023. Before she went to the legislature, relatively recently, she had a long years and years of service in the town of Portsmouth, 2 different stints on the school committee, including, as I joked, as chair, and on just about every community group you could be involved in Portsmouth. So, Terry, please come forward.
Thank you.
What's more fun than this?
So much fun. Pose for the picture. Wow. Between the professors, no pressure, no pressure. So I want to thank you, thank Clean Water Action, thank everybody for being here. Chairman Bennett, I want to recognize you too, as Chairwoman McEntee did. We have really been strong partners on the Environment Committee. We have such a strong committee this year. I want to tell you all, I'm so excited. Every time I go, we have Rep. Carson, Rep. Speakman, Rep. McEntee, and many others that aren't here today. It's a dynamic, it's a dynamite committee, and I'm so honored to serve on it. And I want to thank you all for this. My first session in the House, I sit next to Alex Marzakowski, and he had this bill that I saw sitting on his desk, and I just saw PFAS on it. And I happen to have learned about PFAS because we have PFAS contamination on some Navy land in Portsmouth. So I knew a little bit about PFAS, and he had no other signatures on that bill. And I was like, oh, can I sign on? And then it happened that Rep. Speakman and I just happened to be in the hearing for that bill. And I think Rep. Marzakowski must have had a conflict because he wasn't even able to be there that night to introduce it. So I begged him to give it to me because I wanted to work with on this issue. And Rep. Speakman and I have tag teamed on the PFAS issues in the House. She took on the water portion, and I took on the food packaging. And we have co-chaired each other's. We've worked on we want to get firefighting gear, turnout gear. As soon as that's available, we want to make sure our municipal governments can afford to purchase new gear for firefighters. That's going to be expensive. Rep. Speakman, I'm honored to be here with you today, each being recognized for our teamwork together. And I want to just go off PFAS for a minute, too, and thank the governor for his adoption of the California Clean Car standards and the clean car trucks. I know that was probably, he had to think about that for a while. And Terry, thank you for continuing to to encourage the governor, and I was really glad to see him make that announcement this week. We did have legislation in the House and Senate, Senator DeMario, and I'm just so glad that he decided to take the action for our state, and because that's really going to make a big difference as we try to meet all our goals that the Act on Climate dictates we must. So anyway, thank you so much, and I appreciate it all. And this guy right here, we could not do this PFAS legislation without him. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Corcoran, and thank you for the shout out to the governor. Because I get this weird partial credit when the governor does something that I expected him to do. It's right. People come and say, "Oh, I guess you were right about it." Yeah, well, and let's hope that trend continues in many, many, many ways. And you did part of my introduction for our final legislative champion already. As I joke, bracketed by professors and NEA members. June Speakman is the most recent arrival to the legislature of our group of honorees today, but in a way the most experienced. Everyone in this room gets along with each other from a legislative standpoint, and there's never any controversy. But if you want to be trained for the times there are, academic politics makes what you guys do look like softball. And 4 different times since I've known her, June has stepped forward to be the president of the faculty union at Roger Williams University, and that's been interspersed with her heading up the faculty senate. These experiences are phenomenal preparation, much more so than being a professor of political science, where you go up there and you say, well, this isn't in the textbook. This isn't what we teach the kids on how these things work. I was lucky enough to be sitting in the gallery the day that Representative Speakman got sworn in, and I get to visit the State House for the first few days. He said, "They're up here all the time." I said, "No, I'm only here to see you get sworn in," and off to a good start. And they get nervous back then if I showed up too many times. And the reason we're here is, again, and Terry, you stole the thunder, the drinking water PFAS standards, the co-work on PFAS generally, and also the banning PFAS in firefighter equipment. That's a real thing. That's a real accomplishment. Those women and men who are firefighters in the state are putting their lives on the line every day, and the equipment that's supposed to protect them shouldn't be hurting them. And for all those reasons, we're recognizing Representative Speakman as our legislator. You got yourself into it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh.
Requisite photo.
That's right.
There we go.
Thank you. Hey, thanks everyone. Thank you, Jed. Whenever I'm at a hearing in environment and I'm talking about a bill, Jed is there and he gives me thumbs up if I have not screwed it up. So I thank you very much. And the things that I work on somehow are easy to screw up. PFAS in water, what's a part per trillion? I don't have any idea, but we work it through. And then now solar siting, oh my gosh, virtual net metering and megawatts. So I can't do the work that I do without the advocates who are phenomenal resources for us all. Amy Moses is the conscience of us all. Terry and I had more PFAS meetings with Amy than I can count, and we got it done. So thank you for that. So there's a wonderful book by Barbara Kingsolver called Prodigal Summer. And in that book, she talks about how everything is connected to everything else. And if you pluck the string of a spider's web, it has reverberations, and there are many other metaphors in there. And then there's a book about legislation by Eric Redmond. I'm being a professor right now, sorry. That's probably about 30 years old, and it's called The Dance of Legislation. And that too talks about the political ecosystem, how everything is connected to everything else, and how you can't make these things happen without all of the things, without your legislative advocates, without supportive leadership, Chris Blazajewski, Dave Bennett, the speaker, without your colleagues on the other side of the aisle. With the media, Alex's coverage, Alex covered me when I was on the town council and we were trying to do the plastic bag ban, the Barrington, the first one in the state. And Alex interviewed me, and it was one of my first interchanges with a journalist, and a fabulous journalist. And without coverage of the kind that Alex writes, the public would not understand why PFAS is such a problem for us. And that kind of work, and the work, again, of the advocates and the leadership and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, is what makes this all work. It is a network, and without each other, we can't make it happen. So thank you all. Thank you for this honor. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Representative Speakman. Okay, we're in the final recognition of the day, and then Jed's going to make some closing remarks, and then we're going to ask everyone who got an award to gather for a picture because the sun's back out and we can do it outside. And if I failed to recognize you throughout the program, I apologize, but thank you all for being here. The final award we do, we established several years ago, and it's a peer award. The environmental community rises up and picks a name. It's named after David Garrity. It's called the Award for Lifetime Commitment to the Environment. David Garrity was on his third act with Clean Water Action. He was a journalist. He ran a bed and breakfast. He was kind of the wise, calm voice. Well, Lauren and David were the wise, calm voices in the operation, and we lost him all too soon. And the way wise groups like Clean Water Action recognize folks is to have a second to remember them and give an award in their honor. And many of the folks in the room, especially those in the canvas and those who worked for Clean Water or with Clean Water over the years, knew David. And I'm very pleased that this year's awardee goes to Rupert Friday. Now, it would be gilding the lily to tell you that the reason we got him to Rhode Island was for an NEA job at the University of Rhode Island. But the reason we got him to Rhode Island, he was from Maryland. He worked in the Chesapeake Bay Authority. He worked in the Department of Planning down there. And then someone said, you know, they got a bay called the Narragansett Bay that has a lot of similarities. So they stole him up the coast. And then there was this organization called the Rhode Island Land Trust Council. He was the first executive director starting 20 years ago, May 2003, until he retired. In July of 2021, I figured he retired, I should retire. Every time I went to the State House early on in my lobbying life, Rupert was there, wisely observant and wondering why he was in that big marble building instead of out on the trails and out on the land that he was preserving. And he did so many things. He worked, obviously, to the folks in the room, he worked a lot with the Environmental Council of Rhode Island, and I got to check my notes here because there was so much going on, helped co-create and organize the annual Land and Water Conservation Summit, which is the big conference. The people in the room know that, 300 attendees every year. Land Trust Days, Explore Rhode Island, you know, let's get everybody out on the trails that already exist. Working on legislation or on advocacy to protect open space at Big River, stop the state from selling Camp Pastori, helped. This obviously we work in coalition, but well, we'll give him full credit. He's getting the award. We'll give him full credit for all this stuff. Promoted the Rhode Island Agricultural Land Preservation Commission, worked with DEM, put out a handbook on the Narragansett Bay Training Program, and in his prior work, when he was at URI, helped put together the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission. So now we've got all sides of the state covered, not only through representation, but through Rupert's hard work. I am thrilled. Again, I don't pick these folks. When they told me Rupert got the award, as I have every year with the David Garrity Award, I said, well, how appropriate is that? So how appropriate is that, Rupert? Come forward.
floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Bob. I'm honored and humbled to receive this award. I was fortunate to know Dave Garrett. Sorry, it's a genetic thing in my family. It's hard to speak about things without getting emotional and choking on it. But Dave I always admired, was in awe of Dave and his skills and his work. And receiving this award caused me to reflect on my career and all the environmental issues I've been involved with. And everything I've accomplished was really in collaboration with others. It builds on the work of so many people. Environmental issues are complex, as we've discussed here today, and the solutions required are multifaceted. So to be successful in this work really requires scientists, policy leaders like those here today, grassroots advocates, educators, canvassers, journalists. It takes vision, it takes perseverance. When I began to reflect on my career, at first I was thinking how the pressing environmental issues have changed over the years. And then after thinking about it a little longer, I realized that the environmental issues really haven't changed that much. Our perspective of them and our understanding of them has really changed. And we're making some good progress. In the 1960s, I was fortunate to live in a school district that was one of the first school districts to have an environmental program in the country. As a high school kid, I was leading walks for grade school kids and leading field trips. And we had a residential environmental camp for fifth graders, which I helped lead. But back then, that was really rare. There were very few schools that had environmental curriculums. In 1970, during Earth Day, this used to be called the Earth Day Breakfast of Champions. In 1970, during Earth Day, and there's a few in the room that might remember 1970 Earth Day. Greg Garrett in the back. In 1970 was also when the Clean Air Act was passed. In 1970, during Earth Day, when the Clean Air was passed, nobody was talking about climate change. Nobody was talking about the issue of carbon dioxide. We didn't think carbon dioxide was a problem. Clean Air Act, we were talking about nitrous oxides, sulfur dioxide, soot, and the problems with acid rain, and the problems with forming ground level ozone that was causing problems. Nobody was talking about carbon dioxide or climate change. I have a high school friend who, in the 1970s, he was working at NASA on really cutting edge work. He was working with satellite data and mapping the polar ice caps. None of his colleagues were talking about climate change or CO2. It wasn't something that folks at that level understood or knew. Electric cars, 1970, electric cars were toys that kids played with. On Earth Day in 1970, there were only 3 bald eagle nests in the entire state of Pennsylvania. DDT had pretty much wiped out bald eagles. Ospreys were rare, right? And it happened really in a 25-year period. 25 years earlier, DDT was introduced, and the impact was that quick. 1974, scientists were studying the impact of Concorde and supersonic transport on the atmosphere. And they realized that there was Freon up there. And Freon was a gas that everybody thought was inert. Everybody thought it was a really stable gas. It was being used in aerosol cans to propel for everything from whipped cream to deodorants to furniture polish. And it was used in refrigerators as a coolant. We discovered that Freon wasn't so inert when it got in the upper atmosphere. It was causing a hole in our ozone layer. When I was studying at Penn State in the 1970s, the narrative was nuclear power was going to produce energy, all the energy we could ever need. Energy was going to be cheap. And the issues we talked about when we were looking at nuclear power plants were cooling water coming out of and being discharged into rivers, and the impact of power lines on the landscape. We did talk about what to do with nuclear waste, where and how to store it for eons, ... But the story was that by the time we had nuclear waste from power plants, we would solve this problem. Right. My wildlife management professors at Penn State, one of their best practices that they advocated was to maximize edge habitat for wildlife management. We had no idea how devastating that was going to be for interior dwelling forest birds. But we've learned. We've had successes. And we're solving some serious excuse me, is that family gene? We've had successes and we're solving some serious environmental problems. Today, environmental education is integrated in most school systems. Environmental awareness, environmental ethics, and the concept of sustainability is part of our culture. DDT was banned in 1972. The Endangered Species Act was passed in 1973. And today, seeing eagles and ospreys, they're a common sight here in Rhode Island. In 1987, an international agreement called the Montreal Protocol was adopted to limit freon. Just last year, it was modified for new chemicals and ratified by the Senate in a bipartisan vote. By the way, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, all were bipartisan votes, most of them signed by President Nixon. From hindsight, 2020 hindsight, we know that CO2 and climate change were a problem in 1907, but we didn't understand it back then. We didn't have the knowledge to recognize the emerging environmental problem. Now we have international agreements. Countries, states, corporations are taking action to limit CO2 emissions. We talked about that today. People are even driving electric cars. And today we know the importance of protecting large blocks of forest for wildlife habitats. This work takes a long view, takes perseverance. We need to be smarter, use our understanding of the environment to prevent new problems. But I'm certain of one thing. It will take all of us working together to protect our environment and live more sustainably. And thank you to Clean Water Action and to everyone here for all that you are doing. You are the change makers. You're the ones on the front lines every day working to solve our problems. Thank you, and thank you for this recognition.
Thank you, Rupert. You're still an environmental educator. And one of my not retired projects is called Always Learning Rhode Island, so maybe we'll call you. We'll make sure there's an entire environmental subset to all of that. Before I turn it over to Jed, I should recognize his colleagues, Samantha and Amber and Bethany, who keep me on track. None of this is, this is all magic that happens. They give me the information. And where's Jeff Carter, who is the CEO? Jeff, right there. He's the CEO of Clean Water Action nationally. So this is like undercover boss. They told him to come to Rhode Island and see how this happens, and then go to all the other states and say, I don't know, Jed had 2 United States senators, the entire legislative leadership on both sides, and all these labor people sitting around together talking about the environment. I told Alex he should say the same thing to Kathy Gregg without saying why we're here. Just say they saw us all together just for fun. And my final remark is in thanking Clean Water Action for letting me do this for 20 years. I don't know why, but I'm going to keep saying yes as long as I keep asking. No, well, the green suit, Sheila Dormady made me throw away the green suit. It was so old and ragged, and I wouldn't have done it, but later that day, probably 5 years ago, I went out to lunch with Stephanie Mandeville, and she made me sit on a bar stool where we were having lunch. It was sticky as hell, and the suit died. I think to this day it was a conspiracy between Sheila and Stephanie to get rid of that ragged old suit. But, Greg, since you asked, and this is weird for Capital TV, Green Sox. We did not set that up in advance. My final thought is this. The Netflix algorithm, for some unknown reason, told me to watch a show called The Candidate. Now, I don't know why they would pick on me to watch a show called, no, it's called The Politician. The Politician. Candidate's something totally different. And it's about 2 seasons, about a high school kid in the first season, college kid in the other season. It's an uneven show, but in the first season, he is Amy trying to ban straws and getting pushed back from his school committee and trying to get the drinking fountains where you can refill the bottles. Second year, he's in college, and he's running against a long-term incumbent. And everything he talks about is climate and sustainability. It made me feel horrible about how bad I am as an environmentalist. It made me feel great that there are folks like Zachary who are going to carry it forward, and folks like this entire room, they're going to carry it forward. And it made me feel really good that a Hollywood production is taking the environment and talking about it in a mainstream show as the most important thing, because it is the most important thing. So thank you all again. Jed's going to close it up with all the rest of the thank yous, and we'll see you next year, maybe at a bigger boathouse.
Thank you, Bob, for agreeing to do this yet again. Bob retired from his day job, but apparently this is a life sentence, being the MC of this event. So a round of applause for our MC, Bob Walsh. I'm lucky enough to know personally all 8 of our honorees today, and I've worked closely with all of them, some of them more closely than others, and congratulations again to all of our honorees. And thank you to all of you for taking time out of your day to be here today. This event is a fundraiser in part, so if you did a sponsorship or bought a ticket, thank you for your support. I can guarantee you that as a lean, mean organization, we will put your contribution to good use. But this is also what I like to call a friend-raiser event as well. And it's just great to have so many of our friends and allies here together in the same space. In this room today, we have advocates, we have legislators, we have regulators, organizers, activists, donors, members. And we all come at these issues from slightly different perspectives, okay? We wear different hats, have different roles and responsibilities. Sometimes there's tension. Sometimes we disagree among ourselves about what's the best way forward. But we keep moving forward because we work together, we collaborate, we communicate, we listen, we focus on smart solutions. And at the end of the day, we're able to get a lot done for the environment here in Rhode Island, especially in recent years, because we're all working towards the same end goal, which is making Rhode Island, making the world a cleaner, safer, healthier, more just place for all of us to live in. So for all of you and the hard work that you all do, and I know, the legislators and the advocates in particular, you all work more hours than you probably should, get less sleep than you need, spend less time with your families as a result of the hard work that you do. So thank you, and give yourselves a round of applause for all of your hard work. This event takes place in May every year, which is kind of the apex of the legislative session, as you all know. So I would be remiss if I didn't tell you a little bit about the bills and the things that we're trying to get across the finish line here down the home stretch. We already talked about House Bill 5502, Representative McEntee's bottle bill, sponsored by Bridget Valverde in the Senate. Listen, despite decades of anti-littering efforts, litter, marine debris, plastic pollution continue to be growing and persistent environmental problems and challenges for our waterways all throughout the state. And we know that beverage containers are the most littered items, so the most collected items during neighborhood cleanups, during shoreline cleanups. And in addition to that pollution in the environment, we have a recycling system that's still failing to meet the goals that the Assembly set out some 30-odd years ago. And as we think about policy solutions, things that can help us fix those problems, there's a reason that we keep coming back to recycling refund systems or bottle bills, because we have decades of data and experience from surrounding states that prove these systems work. They work to reduce litter and marine debris. That's been proven. And they work to improve our recycling system by both increasing the percentage of items that are captured and ensuring that the things that are captured are actually effectively recycled. So, this is a tough issue, as Carol noted. There's a lot of opposition. We knew that when we decided to take it on and make it a priority, but it's important. And I'm confident that we can figure out how to make this work for Rhode Island. If we don't get it across the finish line this year, it's our hope that we can create a joint House and Senate study commission to bring all those interested parties to the table and get it done. Because if we can do it in Massachusetts, and they can do it in Connecticut, and they can do it in Vermont, and Maine, and New York, and Iowa, and Michigan, and California, and Oregon, we can do it here in the Ocean State. We talked about PFAS chemicals, which are some of the most dangerous toxic chemicals in the world. They're both highly toxic and incredibly persistent in the environment, which is a really bad combination. We got two important pieces of legislation passed last year, which we already talked about, banning PFAS in food packaging, setting standards for PFAS in drinking water and groundwater and surface water. But we're not going to get PFAS out of our water and out of our bodies until we get it out of the products being sold in the state. And unfortunately, PFAS are in a lot of the things that we all buy and use. Outdoor apparel, cosmetics, children's products, bibs, carpets, which babies crawl on and then put their hands in their mouths, cosmetics, other items. And we gotta get this legislation passed. Maine passed similar legislation 2 years ago. Minnesota, which is a much bigger state than us, is gonna pass it probably next week. And I'm hopeful that we can make some tweaks to the bill and get this one across the finish line this year as well. The last one that I'll mention is environmental justice. The data is clear that people who live in low-income communities, Black and brown communities, are more likely to be exposed to harmful levels of pollution, mainly air pollution. And as a result, they're more likely to suffer adverse health impacts as a result of that increased exposure. These inequalities are unjust, and we have to fix them, but these problems aren't going to fix themselves magically. They're only going to get better when we're thoughtful and intentional about putting forward solutions that are designed to correct those inequities. And the Environmental Justice Act passed the Senate last week. So to my friends in the House, let's get it done this year on the House side and finally make this the year that we do something about environmental justice in this state. There's also some other priorities that we have, which are in the program book. We're part of the Climate Jobs RI Coalition, which is working hard to get the Green and Healthy Schools Act passed, which will mandate that all public schools are net zero by 2035, extremely important. There's the lead pipe bill, which will replace all remaining lead pipes in the state using that bipartisan infrastructure money, and some other priorities as well. But with that, if you haven't taken action or talked to your legislators about these issues I just mentioned, please do so. If our friendly field canvassers knock on your door this summer, sign the petition, take the action, be as generous as you can. If it's a hot day, give them a cold glass of water. And thank you all again for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.
And if you got the award,
all the award winners out on the back.
Out on the patio.
We need a choreographer. Oh, wait. Get the time.
Welcome to the 21st Annual Breakfast of Champions, and we're thrilled to be back in person at the Asbury Boathouse after 3 years of dealing with Zoom and COVID and all of that. There's a writer's strike, so I had to write my own material, so the jokes are going to be worse than usual. But it did occur to me, with a crowd like this, next year we're going to need a bigger boathouse. For the young people who don't get that joke, ask someone with one of those shark license plates and they'll explain it to you. And see, that's some people haven't seen Jaws. So I will give you a brief history of this event. It started 21 years ago in conjunction with